Toronto has millions of people living in the city generating billions of dollars, which are ultimately squandered. Today we'll look at a city filled with debt-ridden, overworked people who have no idea what's about to hit them. The city spends enormous amounts of money on foolishness, and every single project extends way beyond its schedule and budget. Quite frankly, there's not much to show for it. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to look at Toronto's wasted millions. I'm going to show you a few images, I'm going to show you some articles, and for those who aren't from Toronto, you will learn a few things about this city. Let's look at this first. The IMF. Now, I'm certainly not in favor of the actions of the IMF, but they do have reports that they put out every so often, and I tend to agree with the charges and claims that they make. In this case here, the IMF is warning about the risks to the Canadian economy due to a possible correction in the housing market and urged governments to do more to protect against them. Let's be very clear. At this time, there is a real estate bubble like no other that is going on in places including Toronto and Vancouver. You can see that the prices have gone far beyond the reach of people, and they have to extend their means beyond the traditional lenders going to the bank, for example. They have to seek alternative lenders. So you're now able to get a mortgage, believe it or not, at 1.5% down. $15,000 on $1 million property. That's how crazy things have become. It is no different than what had happened during the subprime crisis in the US. So essentially the IMF makes these claims. There is too much household indebtedness, something that I have been warning about literally for years, and the numbers kept climbing and kept climbing, and now we're at a level today that is an all-time record high. But of course that is manageable. That's what they say. It's manageable. As long as real estate prices continue to rise, as long as interest rates remain historically low, there is no cause for concern. Well, I would disagree with that. So let's cover a few issues that really get on my nerves about Toronto. Beginning with this. This is very recent information. No, that's not a computer-generated image. No, this isn't a cartoon that you're watching. What the duck? Cost of a giant rubber duck that's coming to Brockville is under fire. For those who don't know, Brockville is approximately in between Toronto and Montreal, just to give you an idea of where it is. And they decided to celebrate Canada's 150th birthday by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a rubber duck. This is the kind of waste and the silliness that we see. What squandering of taxpayer money, if I ever do say so myself. But of course, it's just hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they do stupider things. Let's look at this. For those in Toronto, several years ago now, if you remember these, well then, I want to know your thoughts on this. I mean, I can't even believe that this actually happened. These statues were put all over the city. And it's supposed to be, you know, it's done by artists and everything, and they decorated them, and I get the point. They actually suggested that while this project costs, I'm sure, it doesn't say here, but millions of dollars, putting these moose around the city actually generated tourism. That's what they're suggesting. That people want to come from all over the world to see decorated moose statues. Maybe you do. I, for one, living in the city, don't want to see that, and I would rather see that money being put into the infrastructure. The highways that are literally falling apart, if you know what I'm talking about. Or, you know, moose statues, either one. Let's move on here. This is going on not just in Toronto, not just in Ontario. You see that going on in the States. Kathleen Wynne. Actually, let me just show you. If you don't know who Kathleen Wynne is, the Premier of Ontario, I could show you a comparison photo here over Redenbacher. It's actually the same person. If you look at Kathleen Wynne and the government of Ontario, what they had decided to do was to actually give a 32% hike in the minimum wage to that key number of $15 an hour. So you've seen that in the States as well. They're pushing for it. $15 an hour, that's what we need. And this here has been done in Ontario as well. A 32% hike. Where do they think this money is going to come from? The businesses can't cope with that. There's no way. And so by increasing the minimum wage, you single-handedly just put countless people out of work. Now think about that for a second. If you're a small business and you were paying somebody $11.40, the previous minimum wage, and now the government says you have to pay them $15 an hour. Well, as soon as 2019 hits and that takes effect, guess what? You have to lay off a bunch of people. Now, how silly is that? Well, of course, what do I know? This is the type of thing that they just don't think for a second, except if you're thinking about one thing, and that is getting re-elected. This is the type of plan that tends to get governments re-elected. They're saying, hey, they're trying to help the people. This is what the general population would see. They're trying to help the people. Look, they're giving us more money. So therefore, we should vote them in again. And that's sort of the ploy here. That's the attempt. They put it a few years off before the next elections or after the next elections. And in this case here, they'll try to use that as a tactic. Look what we did for you. We are implementing this. We're giving you more money. It's free money. Take it. And then we look at this. A little, I can't help but see the similarities here. Okay. Toronto's 10 most profitable fire hydrants in 2015. This isn't a joke. The city of Toronto makes so much money. You have no idea. I bet that there is no other city out there that makes more money on parking tickets per capita for this population than Toronto. It is unbelievable. Think about this. You have a few million people, located in Toronto. If you're just counting Toronto, your number is under 3 million in population, yet they actually bring in $100 million per year just in parking tickets. That's how extreme it is. And what does that do? Well, it generates a lot of money for the government. Where does that money go? Look at the infrastructure in Toronto. It is way behind so many major cities. The subway looks like a joke compared to places like Manhattan, for example, or even cities in Europe. You see the highways falling apart. I mean, I want to see this city do well. I live in the city. I want to see the infrastructure expanding, but I don't want to see the money being squandered. You're making $100 million on parking tickets, and then that money just gets blown away. I don't know where exactly. I could see a few places, but this is the type of thing. And I'm sure whatever city you are from, the same type of deal occurs. It's just an example that hits home for me. What about this? Land transfer tax. The biggest scam in real estate, that in Toronto, you get a double whammy. Look at this. You pay a municipal land transfer tax and a provincial land transfer tax. So if you want to sell your home, you have to pay, depending on the price of the home, an extremely high tax. Look at this. Think about it. Average home, in fact, is right here in this range. So you're paying 2% each tax on that value. So if it's $1 million home, just think of your closing costs, how high they are. So not only do you have to factor in your lawyer fees, your real estate agent fees, all the fees incurred throughout the process, then you have to add on this tax that does nothing at all for the government except lines their pockets. This is literally just theft. What did they have anything to do with you transacting between another individual, transferring homes? This is a crime, and you get it twice. You get the knife in your back twice in Toronto. That's the type of thing that I see that it just makes me so upset to see it. Okay, now this right here was an unfortunate, it's a tragic accident that occurred not too long ago. In fact, it was in March, and it was a chemical spill that occurred because of this truck that was part of I think it was like a 30-car pileup. Hazmat incident ongoing. Avoid the area. Okay, there was a contamination. They were saying it's a very dangerous situation, chemical spill. Don't come here. And what was that? Well, it was hydrofluorosilicic acid. Now, what is that? Well, that's a chemical that they put into the water supply in Toronto that we pay millions of dollars a year. I actually found the bid for 2017, by the way. I don't think I showed it here on this video. I've showed it before in previous bids. That's what they call fluoride, and they put it into the water supply. Now, if you want to argue about the dangers of fluoride, that's absolutely fine, not for this topic of this video, but that's a topic that is hotly contested, and more cities are pulling fluoride out of the water. In Toronto, though, they don't even use fluoride. This is a fact. They use something called hydrofluorosilicic acid. That chemical spilled on the 401, that's a major highway, and they're saying, don't come to the area, it's very dangerous. But they put it in the water supply. While I'm at it, chlorine, they added to the water supply. And they do so in order to clean it, to get rid of all the toxins that are in there. They put a little bit of chlorine. But in Toronto, they add chloramines. So your normal filters actually will not filter out the chlorine. That's the type of thing that they do here in Toronto. It's absurd. It's terrible. And just to put the icing on the cake, this is the G20 in Toronto a few years ago. I was not in the kettling here, but I was in this area during the G20, seeing exactly what had happened, and you will see criminal activity occurring, surely by some individuals who were being very dangerous. Their behavior was out of line, smashing cars, breaking windows, everything else. There's no doubt about that. But the police engaged in criminal activity. There was kidnapping that took place by unmarked vehicles, unmarked individuals. Perhaps they were police officers, we don't know. They were both unmarked. And then they did this kettling. And you could see what they did, essentially blocking everybody in, the innocent and the guilty, and everybody basically being guilty at this point, kettled them all in, and one by one brought them to the detention centers. They let them stand out in the rain, which took place after this image. And this is the type of thing that they were engaging in, stomping on individuals. After singing the O Canada, they literally, and I've shown the images before, literally trampled on people's skulls with horses after finishing the O Canada just to send a message. Well, this is what we have to deal with. I want to just make a very clear point. I want Toronto to do well. I live in the city. I will speak up against any injustice I see, however. And these right here are very good examples of how the money is squandered and how it could be used better in order to improve the economy, reduce the debt, reduce any deficits that we have, and ultimately make things better for everyone. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my books, The Money GPS, and my new release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. So you can actually flip through these books. If you want to, just go over to Amazon. They have a look inside feature. It's going to allow you to flip through the pages of these books to see if you like them. And if you're interested in my audiobook, I have an audio version of Global Economic Collapse for those who are too busy to read. You can check that out at my website, themoneygps.com.